It's time for Football at 4 with 97.3 ESPN.com's Andrew DiCecco.
My first allegiance is what will be best for the Philadelphia Eagles and our fans for the next 3, 4, 5 years.
Powered by the Inside the Birds podcast. Now, live from inside the Matt Black Kia Studios. It's Football at 4.
Football at 4 is powered by the Inside the Birds podcast and brought to you by Dr. Lyle M. Back. For everything from skincare to cosmetic surgery, go to ilovelylback.com. Call 856-MAKEOVER for Dr. Lyle M. Back, proud sponsor of Football at 4. We talk about it. Makeovers, this Eagles franchise, this Eagles roster is going over a complete overhaul makeover. They just made a couple of moves today that brought them under the cap, not under the cap completely, but will cut off about $2 million more. Trayvon Hester and Blake Countess have been released, so the Eagles are continuing to make some moves to try to get under that cap. Joining me now for another edition of Football at 4 on the Boardwalk Honda Hotline is Andrew DiCecco, InsideTheBirds.com, and, of course, Football at 4 here on 97.3 ESPN. What's going on, Andrew?
Hey, Mike, I'm doing well, enjoying this nice weather. How are you?
Doing good. The weather's nice, but 50 days into the NFL draft, even better, eh?
Yeah, man.
All right, so I know you like to talk draft. I know you like to talk about a lot of draft things. I want to get to that in just a second. But first, I want to get your take on yesterday's reporting that essentially said, and what it tells you, that Jeff Lurie wants to prioritize building around Jalen Hurts. What is read the tea leaves on that for us a little bit?
Well, I mean, that kind of harkens back to what I've been saying for the past few weeks. And in my approach, what I would do and what makes the most sense moving forward for the Philadelphia Eagles, it says that Jeffrey Lurie, to me, has a big say, which we all kind of knew. He has a big say in what's going on. And it's very unusual for an owner to kind of make that declaration that this is going to be the way it's going to be moving forward in 2021. But, I mean, looking beyond that, I would say, it makes the most sense because there's so many holes in the roster that to keep playing this quarterback carousel, throwing darts at the board, for another year of wasting a premium draft pick on that, I think you just have to start. You have to ride with the guy that you invested a second-round pick in last year and start building pieces around him to see if that, and not just him, the roster itself, because the defense needs a lot of work too. But I mean, you'll find out soon enough if Jalen Hurts is the guy or not. But I think right now, you're not going to win. You're not going to win a championship anyway, in all likelihood. So ride it out with Jalen Hurts in this year. See what you can do. See if you can get some young wide receivers and an offensive line, some men pieces there, defensive line, some pieces there. And if he's not the guy, you'll be picking high next year anyway, and you'll have opportunity to find that guy that you're looking for. That's going to lead the franchise.
All right, Mortensen. So he says Lurie has instructed his group to prioritize making Hurts successful. Does that scream to you, I want to draft a skill position player to help my quarterback out?
Well, I mean, and that's another thing that I was saying. They can't make the same mistake that they made with the previous quarterback, and they need to start surrounding the quarterback with talent and bona fide talent. And that, to me, when I heard that, it signals to me that it's either going to be an offensive lineman or a skill player, because you want to surround him with talent. Well, that also it includes the trenches there to shore that up to make sure he's got the proper protection. But I mean, it kind of to me signals it's either going to be a Penei Sewell should he fall to 6, a Jamar Chase, Kyle Pitts, Devontae Smith even. So I mean, I those are the players that I would kind of anticipate getting a lot of traction with the Eagles in the coming weeks.
Now, are you surprised about the about face? Because about the time that Wentz got traded, there was reports that the Eagles intended to bring in competition. There's two things that I look at here, Andrew. One, if you're saying, look, I want to build around Hurts, does that limit the level of backup quarterback that you can bring in here? That's one. And two, it was reported before they intended to bring in competition for Hurts, and then all of a sudden that changed. That seems to be a quick turn.
Yeah, I think once they realized how the money that they're working with here and the quality of player that you're really going to bring in, in all likelihood, you're not going to get a veteran that's going to push Jalen Hurts with what the Eagles have to work with from a cap standpoint. I mean, I don't know how much of Ryan Fitzpatrick would want to come here at this stage of his career. I mean, he's more of that bridge quarterback that could on a playoff caliber team, even a championship contender. I think that he would be more inclined to go there at this stage of his career. Jacoby Brissett, same thing, young quarterback. Young enough quarterback that I think that he has starting potential. Why would he want to come to Philadelphia? So, I mean, really what you're looking at is a guy that you could, someone that's not really seriously going to challenge former second round pick. And I think that they had no choice but to say, this is who we're going with, and we're going to start to build around him.
Andrew DiCecco, Football 4 here, powered by the Inside the Birds podcast. Let me ask you, I know we've kind of brushed on this a little bit, but there's some more conversation about it. The Eagles at 6, it doesn't sound like they're going to take a quarterback at that spot. But if, Hurts was a member of this draft class, he obviously was in last year's draft class, I don't think he'd be a first-round pick. But how is there such a huge gap between him and the guys that could be available there at 6 in your mind?
Well, there's a big gap between.
Are they making a big mistake if they don't take one of these quarterbacks if they're there?
I mean, to answer your first question, there's a big gap between Justin Fields and Jalen Hurts. I think that he's just more polished and he's, has a tremendous upside. And from a mechanical standpoint, he's well advanced, well past where Jalen Hurts is currently. But other than that, I like the upside of a Trey Lance. Don't know. He strikes me as more of a project, not necessarily ready to be plug and play. And again, that's you're kind of gambling there with the 6th overall pick. Zach Wilson. I mean, I have mixed opinions on what I think he can be. I mean, I don't necessarily know if he's pro ready yet, and I'm not necessarily sure what his upside ultimately is. But Justin Fields is the one quarterback that, if I'm the Eagles, if you're considering any of them, he would be the guy. But I mean, you'll have that opportunity next year if you determine that Jalen Hurts isn't the guy to lead your franchise. And I think right now, the smart move, the responsible move, is to start adding pieces because you really need to start building this roster if you want to, because it's going to be a multi-year rebuild. So, I mean, you got to start adding pieces elsewhere.
So if Fields was there, let's say he somehow fell to 6, and Chase, Pitts, Sewell, which guy you take out of that crew?
I mean, if you're going by the best player available, it would be Penei Sewell. If in that scenario, I have a hard time believing that he's the 6th. That he's below the. The Eagles don't have a top 6 grade on him. I mean, by all accounts, he's a top 3 player in this class. So I think if he's available at 6, that's a no-brainer. But outside of that, I would probably say Jamar Chase.
Okay. Well, you and I disagree on that. Sewell. I'm not saying he stinks. I'm just not taking a lineman in this draft, not in the first round. That's all. You obviously think that they would. No, do you think they would do that?
Yes, and the reason being is that there's so many uncertainties on that offensive line. You have a lot of older players that are coming off injuries.
Yeah.
You have Andre Dillard, he's a big question mark. You have Jordan Mailata, who showed a lot of promise, in his 10 starts, and that's great. But that, again, you have a lot of uncertainty surrounding that.
Let me ask you this, Andrew. Roseman takes a lot of bullets, right? He gets killed. Don't you think he would like to be the guy that says, well, I found Jordan Mailata. He's a 10-year starter.
Oh, yeah, of course. But, I mean, you have to have more than that. You have to have a plan B because, obviously, you see all the injuries and how that kind of morphed the offensive line. It was in constant flux all season long.
Yeah.
You have to start building pieces, and if a player like that, who I consider to be a top 3 player in this draft, and I think most do, if he falls to 6, that to me is a no-brainer. I mean, otherwise you go in saying, "Oh, Lane's going to be good. He's coming off injury. Brandon Brooks will be fine. He'll make it through the season." And then I think that's just that would be malpractice on their part. They've made that mistake with other positions such as wide receiver, and it kind of backfired.
The hard part,
don't have a plan B.
The hard part I have with that, and I agree with what you're saying. I mean, what your premise is, the line's a little older. Brooks is injured. We'll get to him in a second because there's some reports they might try to trade him. He's got a 4-year deal. Lane Johnson still has time on the contract. So, you're hoping you don't have to replace these guys. Now, like you said, they have been injured. The problem is they don't play the same position. So am I going to move Penei Sewell, or am I going to move? We know Dillard can't play anywhere else. We've tried that before. Okay, maybe Mailata can go play right tackle. But if I'm drafting a left tackle at number 6, doesn't he have to play? And that essentially means I have a former first-round pick and a guy who started and played well for me the year before sitting on my bench.
Yeah, I mean, I think Mailata can play right tackle. Dillard is a top backup to me. I don't necessarily know that he has starting upside. I mean, obviously this summer will determine a lot. Hopefully we have a preseason to make that determination. But but from what we've seen so far in Andre Dillard, I don't know that he has a starter's upside. But then, I mean, at left tackle, Penei Sewell is superior than the players that the Eagles currently have.
No doubt. I'm not arguing that.
Making an improvement in an area that they really could stand to use, so, to really could fortify. I think that would be a no-brainer there. No matter who you have back at quarterback, you're going to have that blindside protector, future All-Pro for the next 10 to 12 years.
Yeah, definitely not disagreeing with you on that point. I think Sewell's a better talent than the two guys that you have. I want to ask your opinion about Zach Ertz and what you think. Mike Silver reported multiple teams have called the Eagles about the possibility of trading for Ertz. I have a hard time thinking they're going to be able to get what they want in a trade. There is some scuttlebutt that he would rather be released because he wants to pick the team he wants to go to. But if they were to trade him, what kind of value do you anticipate they could legitimately get back in return?
Oh, man. I mean, I've been asked this a lot the last couple of days. I don't think that they would get much more than a 4th-round pick.
Yeah, agree with you there. At that point,
based on age, position, upside. I think that all these things are factored in when you're looking at a player like Zach Ertz, who has had a tremendous career, but this is a production-based business. And when you look at what the season that he just had, and the number of tight ends that are out there, you look at a guy like Darren Waller who slipped through the cracks. These type of guys are everywhere, and even an undrafted free agents are some good finds. So I mean, Zach Ertz is still a top. I would say probably a top 7, top 6 tight end in this league. So I mean, but that said, you look at the age, you look at the production from last year, you're not going to get much more than a 4th-round pick for him.
Now let me ask you this. Because you don't have a 4th-round pick, are you willing to just say, you know what, I need to get a 4th-round pick? That's what I'll do.
Yeah, because the other option is you release him and you get nothing.
Yeah.
I mean, so I would definitely take what you can get and consider that, a solid trade. If you can yield a 4th-round pick for Zach Ertz, given everything that goes along with it, he's not a very desirable trade target at this particular moment.
Right. Agree with you there. Andrew DiCecco, Football 4. A couple other things. Brandon Brooks, would you be on board with trading Brandon Brooks? There's some reports that they have taken calls. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean the Eagles are, blowing up other teams' phones, but I don't know. I guess I have a vision that if you have Lane Johnson and Brandon Brooks back healthy with Kelsey Sayamala and then whoever plays left tackle, that you have a pretty darn good offensive line for your young quarterback. So I am not a big fan of moving Brooks if I don't have to.
No, that wouldn't make no sense to me either. I mean, you need to whatever quarterback is back there for the Eagles next year, give him a chance. Give him a chance to be productive. I mean, Nate Herbig's a nice player, more of a rotational lineman that steps in when needed. He's not a guy you obviously want starting all those games. So, I mean, Brandon Brooks he was still playing at a high level before he got hurt. There's a tremendous injury history there, but I mean, you're not going to get much for him in the trade market. It makes much more sense to keep him on the roster and just kind of surround the quarterbacks, surround the offense with as much talent as possible in order for them to be successful.
Yeah, I know that, and I'm imagining teams are saying, look, you have cap problems. Do you want to make a move here? I would hold off on that as long as I can if I'm Howie Roseman there. I do want to, touch on the draft a little bit here. Do you, obviously everybody's talking about Pitts, and today Daniel Jeremiah said if he could pick out one Hall of Famer in this class, Pitts would be the guy. is he just like the hot name right now, or would you legitimately say no? This guy is going to be what they're saying. I mean, we had Adam on Friday. He didn't call him a tight end. He called him an offensive weapon. So does that make you feel like if he's there at 6 and the other guys are gone, Sewell's gone, and you're not taking a quarterback, that he has now maybe jumped ahead of your wide receiving crew?
I think that's fair. He's a weapon, and when you look at the evolution of the tight end position, guys like Travis Kelce and George Kittle, they're much more than tight ends, and you see how they can kind of completely change the identity of an offense because teams have to account for them wherever they may be lined up. And like a Jamar Chase, who's going to be split out wide and everything like that, and he can move into the slot. Kyle Pitts can do all of that, and he has the size, runs the routes like a wide receiver. He can create all these different mismatches, and pairing him with Dallas Goedert, my gosh, you have two potential top 10 tight ends on one offense, and Kyle Pitts can even play out wide, just like Goddard can. I mean, that just completely changes the entire dimension of the offense.
Yeah, that's the point. Is you just mentioned you could use him out wide, use Goddard in the slot, use Goddard as a traditional tight end with him in the slot. I love the idea of putting those two together, and then of course what Chase adds to this team. If they're both there now. Somebody brought up an interesting conversation the other day is if you can move down to 8, how many quarterbacks do you think go in the top 10?
In the top 10, I would say probably 4.
So you're going 4. Do you think they all go before 8?
No, I think Trey Lance might go closer to the top to 9 or 10.
Okay, so yeah, the point that was brought up by a listener was if 4 quarterbacks go and Sewell goes in the top 5, that if you move back to 8, then you would end up with either Pitts, Chase, or Smith or Waddle, one of those guys. You would get one of the skill position players. So that would be making.
That's what I would do. Yeah.
Yeah, that would make moving back to 8 very attractive.
That's exactly what I would do. I would move down 2 spots. I think you and I talked about this last week. I said if you wanted to get Kyle Pitts, I think that the furthest back that you could afford to move is 8. I think 9 would be a little risky, but I think 8 is kind of that sweet spot. And there's going to be other options there because the way that the draft board I anticipated shaking out, you're going to have your pick from Waddle, Chase, Pitts, and that's a great spot to be in if you're the Eagles, and you get to add another asset. So,
all right, last one. I love talking draft. 50 days away. If you take an offensive player in round 1, would you be on board with defense in the 2 third-round picks and the 2 5-round picks, basically going defense, 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 defense?
Yeah, because you need a defensive line, you need a defensive end, you need a linebacker, you need a corner, a safety. That to me, the offense. If you add
2 safeties,
you really need 2 safeties. You're going to get a veteran, probably low cost veteran in free agency, but it's really going to be like of the Andrew Sendejo mold. Nothing really of note. I don't think, but I think there's more holes, and it's an older defense. Whereas on the offense, there are some pieces there. The offensive line is sustainable for this season. And if you add a piece like a Chase or a Pitts, I think that will kind of suffice in that area. You're not going to be able to address all the needs in one offseason, obviously, but I certainly think that you need to get younger on defense because guys like Brandon Graham aren't going to be here forever. Fletcher Cox, a lot of uncertain futures past beyond this season.
Yeah.
So I think that you need to start adding into the trenches there. They're getting a little bit older at defensive tackle. Obviously, Fletcher Cox, Malik Jackson, and Javon Hargrave. It was their big signing last year. But you do need to get younger there and kind of start to revamp that area because before you know it, you're gonna have to start over.
Yeah, it's funny
in that position.
Yeah, Andrew, if you look at the roster and you start to look at the defense, you start to realize they had Malcolm Jenkins playing safety there. Last year you had Rodney McLeod. You had 2 safeties. Man in that position since 2013. You had, very good talent there. next year you could be in a spot at safety where you don't recognize either guy playing safety. So that Slay on one side, you have no idea who's going to be playing the other side right now. You mentioned the defensive end spot. You've got Graham and
It's a big weakness.
Yes.
That's a big weakness that has kind of gone under the radar because everyone's been focusing on wide receiver and getting offensive talent. But, I mean, the pass rushers, outside of Josh Sweat, you really don't have a young – I mean, Derek Barnett's a big question mark. He's a very polarizing player. You don't know how he figures into the long-term plans. But I do know that, Josh Sweat is a good rotational end, a third end. I don't know if he's somebody that you want assuming all these different snaps, but you need to add a guy. That's why I said if they traded down, top 10 or 12, a guy like Kwity Paye from Michigan would be a nice pick there as an edge rusher, replacing another Michigan edge rusher. So I mean, it's going to have to get addressed sooner or later.
It sure is. So much on the defensive side that we will focus in on. 50 days to the draft. Andrew DiCecco at DiCecco NFL. Follow him on Twitter as the Eagles offseason continues. Free agency begins. By the way, what'd you think of the Dak deal?
I think that's a lot of money. I think he definitely he definitely came away like a bandit there.
$75 million he'll get paid. He has one playoff win. I'm not knocking Dak, but doesn't have a big track record of success, and the Cowboy fans are already lining up to make excuses. All right, Andrew, appreciate it, man.
You got it, man. Take care.
Football at 4, powered by the Inside the Birds podcast. It drops on Monday and Thursday at 6 a.m., and he, like August, appeared via the Boardwalk Honda hotline. Football at 4 on the Sports Bash is brought to you by Dr. Lyle M. Back. For everything from skincare to cosmetic surgery, go to iloveLyleBack.com or call 856-MAKEOVER. Dr. Lyle M. Back, proud sponsor of Football at 4.